In the quiet folds of a medieval valley, where moonlight often felt heavier than the air itself, a young traveller named Rowan stepped into the village of Eldergate. He had wandered for days, drawn by tales of strange whispers the wind carried through the wooden beams of its homes. People said the valley held memories, not ghosts, just memories, and if you listened closely enough, they would rise to the surface of your mind like ripples in still water. Rowan was tired, dust clinging to his boots, but he felt a strange peacefulness as he stepped onto the worn cobblestone path, unaware that the simplest of behaviours here had once been branded as signs of madness. He first met an old baker named Lisa, who hummed while kneading dough. Her voice was gentle, almost like lullabies drifting through the night. Rowan found comfort in it, but she explained with a soft smile that in older days, humming to oneself in public was considered unsettling, a sign of a wandering spirit touching your mind. She told him villagers used to avoid her grandmother simply because she sang while working. Rowan listened, thinking how strange it was that something so soothing could ever be feared. Later that evening, Rowan walked past a small barn lit only by a single lantern. A young woman named Mara sat outside, twirling a small wooden charm in her fingers as she stared at the stars. She said she came here to think, to clear her mind. But in medieval times, she explained, staring at the sky too long, especially alone, meant you might be speaking to unseen entities. People once believed that those who sought solitude were under supernatural influence. Rowan sat beside her, feeling the cool air settle around them, wondering how loneliness had ever been mistaken for danger. A shepherd near the creek told Rowan about his ancestor, a boy who used to talk to animals as if they understood him. In the old days, people called that unnatural, a breach between mortal and mystical realms. Rowan watched sheep move slowly across the grass, their bells softly chiming, and realized how easy it is to misjudge what we don't understand. At dawn, Rowan met a monk who traveled between towns. He described how, centuries ago, writing in a personal journal was seen as suspicious. Keeping private thoughts hidden from the community was a sign of mistrust, or worse, mental disturbance. Rowan felt a chill thinking about how something so normal today had once been feared as a fracture in the mind. An elderly woman named Denna welcomed him to stay in her cottage for the night. As she boiled herbs to make tea, she explained how herbal scents, lavender, mint, wild chamomile, had once been thought too strong, believed capable of bending the mind. She chuckled softly, saying people once accused her aunt of manipulating thoughts simply for enjoying strong fragrances. Rowan inhaled the aroma filling the room, letting it ease the ache in his shoulders. On a fog-soaked morning, Rowan passed a boy skipping stones across a pond. The child said that long ago, adults believed repetitive actions like counting, tapping, or skipping stones were signs of hidden anxiety or possession, but all the boy wanted was to see how far the stone would go. Rowan knelt beside him, adding his own stone to the calm surface, watching rings expand outward like soft breaths. As he travelled deeper into Eldergate, Rowan discovered an abandoned watchtower where villagers once punished people who daydreamed. They called it mind drifting. Anyone caught staring too long at nothing could be accused of letting their soul slip away from their body. Rowan walked through the dusty corridor, feeling the sorrow of those who once sat here for simply dreaming. A carpenter told Rowan that laughing alone, even quietly, had once been seen as dangerous. People feared it meant a person was hearing voices beyond the veil of reality. Rowan couldn't imagine such a world. Laughter felt like the safest companion one could have. A gentle old man showed Rowan a painting hidden behind a wooden panel. His ancestor loved drawing shapes and symbols, not religious ones, just patterns he found beautiful. People said he was touched by madness. Rowan stared at the painting, letting its patterns pull him into thought, realizing how creativity once threatened those who feared the unknown. As Rowan walked out of the cottage, he met a girl picking wildflowers. She explained that collecting too many of one kind meant you were obsessed or cursed. Rowan smiled, helping her gather a bouquet of simple yellow blooms. Deeper into the village, a soft-spoken historian described how people who slept too much were thought to be under dark enchantments, while those who slept too little were believed to be influenced by spirits. Rowan thought of his own restless nights under open skies and felt a quiet empathy for those who were judged for simply being tired. Near the old mill, Rowan found a man carving tiny boats from pieces of driftwood. The man explained that fidgeting hands once suggested a frantic mind. Rowan picked up one of the wooden boats, admiring its smooth curves, and felt the truth settle in his chest. People have always needed small comforts. As sunset fell, Rowan saw villagers lighting tiny candles and placing them along the path. A woman whispered that, in medieval times, people thought staring into candle flames too long could unravel one's sanity. Rowan watched the flames dance softly, feeling more grounded, not less. A storyteller by the main well-shared tales of people punished for talking in their sleep. Rowan felt a pang, remembering long nights when dreams spoke through him without permission. Across the village, an herbal healer showed Rowan how people once feared anyone who collected rainwater. They thought such a person sought control over nature. Rowan cupped rain in his hands and let it drip through his fingers, feeling the simplicity of it. Near the riverbank, Rowan found a fisherman who said that sitting quietly for too long without moving was once considered a sign of enchantment. Rowan watched the water glide by, thinking how peace had often been mistaken for danger. As twilight settled, Rowan noticed a child who liked arranging stones by size. Her mother told him this was once feared as a sign of ritualistic behavior. Rowan helped the child arrange a perfect line, marveling at her focus. Finally, as the first night closed in, Rowan sat beneath an old oak tree and listened to the sounds of Eldergate, breathing softly around him. He thought about all the ordinary actions that had once been misunderstood, and he felt a deep sense of compassion for those who lived under constant suspicion. The stars overhead shimmered like ancient stories waiting to be retold, and Rowan knew his journey had only begun. The next morning, Rowan ventured toward the heart of Eldergate, guided by the rising scent of fresh bread and the murmur of early footsteps. He reached the town square just as the sun's first rays spread across the rooftops like golden paint. Here he met Osric, the village's unofficial historian, a man who remembered everything and forgot nothing. Osric explained that in medieval times, people believed remembering too much was dangerous. They thought that storing too many details inside the mind could weigh it down, twist it, overwhelm it. Rowan smiled softly, thinking how modern minds would be accused daily. As they walked through narrow alleys framed with old timber beams, Rowan met a woman who loved collecting smooth river stones. She carried dozens of them in her apron pockets, each one different in color and shape. She told Rowan that centuries ago, this harmless hobby was labeled an obsession, proof of a disordered mind. Rowan held one of the stones in his hand, feeling its polished surface, wondering how people ever feared something so gentle. Near a quiet courtyard, Rowan watched a young man sketch the outline of a bird in flight. He worked slowly, eyes drifting from page to sky. The young man shared that once, drawing living creatures without permission from the church was believed to capture their souls. Artists were treated as threats. Rowan thought of all the beauty lost to fear. A cluster of villagers gathered near the water well, whispering to Rowan about a strange custom. In earlier times, people who walked barefoot on cool ground were suspected of trying to ground their spirits or communicate with the earth. Rowan removed his boots and stepped onto the soft soil, feeling a quiet comfort bloom beneath him. A friendly blacksmith invited Rowan into his workshop. The man admitted he often talked to his tools while working, something his ancestors had been punished for. Back then, speaking to inanimate objects meant your mind was splintering. Rowan watched sparks dance from hammer to anvil, thinking how conversation, even with silent things, can steady the heart. Outside the workshop, Rowan found a young mother humming to calm her crying child. She revealed that soothing melodies once frightened medieval villagers. They believed certain tunes could summon spirits between worlds. Rowan listened closely. The melody felt more like a warm blanket than a portal. Walking further, Rowan noticed a woman sorting herbs into tiny bundles. She explained how even identifying too many plants in the old days marked someone as abnormal. Knowledge beyond the average villager was often seen as a threat. Rowan touched the rosemary sprig she handed him, inhaling a scent that felt safe and familiar. He encountered an old man near the chapel steps, tracing lines in the dust with a wooden stick. The villagers once believed that drawing repeated patterns meant the mind was cracking open. The old man simply found peace in it. Rowan knelt and drew a circle beside him, sharing the quiet. Further down, Rowan met a girl who loved mimicking bird calls. In earlier times, copying animal sounds was seen as disturbing behavior, something only the mentally unwell would do. Rowan asked her to teach him, laughing softly when his imitation came out crooked. Near midday, Rowan crossed paths with a tailor stitching patterns onto a cloak. She said that decorative sewing, especially in spirals or symmetrical lines, once signified obsessive tendencies. Rowan admired the craftsmanship, noting how beauty had been misunderstood. A young boy told Rowan about his ancestor, who loved sleeping near running water. Back then, it was believed water whispered to you, driving the mind toward instability. Rowan sat beside the creek, finding its rhythm grounding rather than unsettling. Approaching the village outskirts, Rowan saw a woman sitting alone in a meadow, braiding tall grass into simple chains. She explained that making repetitive crafts in solitude had once been feared. Rowan sat beside her, weaving his own small braid. He encountered a beekeeper who spoke softly to her hives. In medieval days, speaking to bees was considered a sign of emotional imbalance. Rowan watched bees drift like floating gold, understanding how connection with nature had been misjudged. Near a cluster of pine trees, Rowan found a young man listening to the wind. He said his ancestors were punished for this, as listening to natural sounds for too long was said to draw madness. Rowan closed his eyes, letting the gentle rush of air quiet his thoughts. Further ahead, a woman told Rowan how her great-great-grandmother loved keeping seashells, even though they were far from the sea. Collecting items without purpose once marked someone as mentally unstable. Rowan rolled a small shell between his fingers, imagining its long journey here. A lonely musician played soft notes on a wooden flute at the village edge. Music played alone in the forest had once been considered a sign of dark communion. Rowan sat with him, letting the music wash through his mind like warm rain. Rowan then met a quiet boy stacking tiny sticks into shapes. The villagers once thought these structures were secret symbols. Rowan helped him build a small tower, admiring the child's imagination. Near twilight, Rowan encountered a woman arranging candlelight shadows across her wall. Medieval villagers believed playing with shadows signaled the presence of spirits. Rowan watched her gently move her hands, creating silhouettes that danced like soft memories. At the end of the day, Rowan found himself drawn back to the oak tree near the village centre. The air felt calm, softened by all the stories he'd heard. He realized that the people of Eldergate had inherited generations of misunderstanding, yet carried it now with quiet acceptance. The stars blinked awake overhead, and Rowan felt the valley settling into night like a blanket being pulled over a weary world. As the third day dawned over Eldergate, Rowan walked toward the distant hills, where mist gathered like gentle clouds rolling across the earth. Up here, he met an elderly shepherd who traced old constellations with his staff. The shepherd explained that centuries earlier, people who mapped the stars were feared, because gazing too long into the night sky was said to fracture the mind. Rowan tilted his head back, letting the early morning stars fade into soft daylight. Following a dirt path, Rowan found a quiet young man stacking firewood in perfect patterns. Long sticks, short ones, thick, then thin. He confessed that his family once hid this habit because arranging things too neatly was seen as a sign of unrest within the soul. Rowan helped him stack wood, enjoying the satisfying click of pieces coming together. Further ahead, Rowan encountered a traveller sitting cross-legged on the grass, eyes closed. The man explained that meditation, stillness, was once feared. Villagers believed silence could invite unwanted spirits. Rowan sat beside him, breathing gently, letting the earth hold them both in peace. At a creek crossing, Rowan greeted a girl who liked skipping across stones over and over. She said medieval villagers believed repetitive movements created pathways for spirits. Rowan tested the stones with his own boots, laughing softly as water splashed against the rocks. In a sunlit meadow, Rowan met a young woman gathering wild berries. She said her ancestors were punished for tasting too many different berries, because it meant they were experimenting with mind-altering foods. Rowan picked a berry, and let its sweetness brighten his tongue. Nearby, an old man traced runes into the dirt, explaining that shaping symbols without the church's blessing once marked a person as mentally fractured. Rowan touched the etched shapes, feeling the stories they carried. At the windmill ridge, Rowan found a woman spinning wool. She said villagers once believed people who talked to themselves during work were losing their grip on reality. Rowan listened to her hum, watching the wool gather in soft, airy spirals. Further down, he stumbled upon a young hunter practicing archery. He confessed that focusing too intensely on one target was once thought dangerous. People who concentrated too deeply were believed to be trapped inside their minds. Rowan watched as the arrow met its mark with gentle precision. A group of children invited Rowan to join their game of tapping sticks together, rhythmically. They said that rhythmic tapping was once feared for mimicking ritual behavior. Rowan joined happily, feeling the rhythm ease tension from his shoulders. In the forest shade, Rowan met a man tracing tree rings with the tip of his knife. He said that looking too closely at nature's patterns once marked someone as mentally unstable. Rowan studied the rings, marveling at their quiet wisdom. At the riverbank, he found a woman whispering her thoughts into the flowing water, explaining medieval belief that speaking to water meant losing one's sense of reality. Rowan whispered too, feeling the river carry his words away softly. Returning to the village, Rowan watched a boy practice balancing on a single stone. He said that seeking balance alone was once considered odd, a sign the mind was trying too hard to stabilize itself. Rowan tried balancing and felt laughter rise from within. Near an abandoned barn, Rowan found a man carefully listening to the echo of his own footsteps. He said that in old days, hearing echoes meant spirits were following you. Rowan listened too, amused by the simplicity of sound. A woman nearby braided threads again and again, creating long strands. She said repetitive braiding once signaled obsessive tendencies. Rowan ran his fingers along the soft thread, admiring the patience behind each twist. Deeper in the meadow, Rowan met someone who collected feathers. In the past, this was seen as a sign of wandering thoughts, believed to let strange ideas take root. Rowan picked up a feather, letting it glide from one hand to another. He then met a beekeeper's apprentice who spent hours observing honeycombs. The villagers once feared staring too long at patterns. Rowan looked closely, mesmerized by the natural geometry. Near twilight, Rowan encountered a man who enjoyed watching smoke rise from the fire pit. Medieval people believed that staring at smoke too long meant the mind was drifting. Rowan found it calming, letting the swirling wisps soothe him. A soft-spoken woman showed Rowan how she liked listening to the sound of wheat brushing in the wind. She said that listening too closely to nature once signaled unnatural sensitivity. Rowan closed his eyes and let the rustling calm settle into his bones. As the sun sank below the hills, Rowan met a storyteller who confessed that imagining too many stories at once was once feared. Rowan felt inspired, knowing there was strength in imagination. Finally, Rowan reached the highest ridge overlooking Eldergate. The valley stretched beneath him like a living painting. He realized the world had once feared the gentle, misunderstood the harmless, and punished the innocent. And yet, the people of Eldergate now embraced what their ancestors once feared. Rowan felt the wind steady around him, carrying ancient echoes of healing and forgiveness. On the fourth day, Rowan walked deeper into the surrounding woodlands, where the trees grew taller and shadows stretched longer. Here, he encountered a quiet herbalist sitting beside a moss-covered stump. She explained that in medieval times, people who sat still for too long in the woods were believed to be communicating with forest spirits. Rowan sat with her anyway, feeling the steady support of the ground beneath him. Further along the winding trail, Rowan discovered a man arranging pine cones into gentle spirals. He told Rowan that making patterns in nature had once been seen as a mind unhinged. Rowan helped him finish the spiral, watching it bloom like a forest flower. Near a fallen log, Rowan found a young girl tracing the movement of ants with focused eyes. She said her ancestors were shunned for watching insects too intently, as if noticing small things meant something was wrong. Rowan crouched beside her, fascinated by the tiny worlds unfolding. At a nearby spring, Rowan met a woman cupping water and studying the ripples. She said people who stared too long at reflections in medieval days were believed to be under enchantment. Rowan looked at his own faint reflection, peaceful under the sunlight. In a clearing, Rowan encountered a man balancing stones into small towers. He admitted that stone stacking was once thought a ritualistic sign of imbalance. Rowan added a stone to the growing tower, steadying it with care. A gentle breeze carried Rowan toward a small hut, where a weaver worked on a loom. The weaver confessed that weaving complex patterns once scared villagers. They believed the mind creating such intricacy must be fractured. Rowan admired the weaving, feeling its harmony. Walking further, Rowan encountered a musician tapping wooden chimes in a soft pattern. He said rhythmic tapping had once been labeled a symptom of madness. Rowan sat nearby, letting the melody wrap around him. Rowan came upon a young man lying in the grass watching clouds drift. He said cloud gazing had been feared once. People believed it meant the mind was dissolving into the sky. Rowan joined him, tracing shapes in the drifting white. Near an abandoned shrine, Rowan met a woman whispering her dreams into hollow tree trunks. In old times, this was seen as losing touch with reality. Rowan listened, realizing dreams were just another language of the heart. At a steep hillside, Rowan watched a man pacing back and forth, slowly. He said his ancestors did this to calm their thoughts, but were accused of instability. Rowan paced alongside him, feeling anxiety lift from his steps. A child nearby collected smooth sticks and tied them with string. She said people once feared these bundles as symbols of disturbed minds. Rowan helped her arrange them into a simple rustic ornament. Further along, Rowan found a quiet man listening to rocks tumble in a creek. Medieval villagers believed those who listened to such meaningless sounds were slipping mentally. Rowan let the bubbling water soothe him. At a quiet ridge, a woman scribbled notes on scraps of parchment. She explained that writing personal reflections was once considered dangerous. Thoughts were to be shared, not hidden. Rowan respected the privacy of her words. He encountered another traveller who loved mimicking the sound of wind. That, too, was once feared, believed to invite chaos. Rowan tried mimicking it, laughing softly at the attempt. Near sunset, Rowan found a man sitting alone with his eyes closed, simply breathing deeply. Deep breathing had once been thought a sign of emotional instability. Rowan joined him, letting breath and silence intertwine. A young shepherd nearby counted sheep, not to check their number, but to calm his mind. Counting repetitively once signaled mental imbalance to villagers. Rowan counted along, finding the rhythm calming. At a fire pit, Rowan met an older woman watching embers glow. Staring into fire had once been seen as dangerous, feared to ignite strange thoughts. Rowan watched the warm embers pulse gently. Near a grove, Rowan encountered someone softly chanting to themselves, a personal melody, nothing more. But chanting without religious purpose was once feared. Rowan listened quietly, feeling comfort in the simple repetition. Finally, Rowan reached a hillside framed by tall oaks, where he met a traveller stacking leaves by size. This was once called obsessiveness. Rowan helped him, enjoying the peaceful task. As night drew in, Rowan returned to the heart of the valley. Fireflies drifted like floating lanterns. Rowan felt a deepening peace, realizing the world had always held gentle souls who were misunderstood by fear. Tonight, Eldergate felt like a sanctuary built from ancient healing. By the fifth morning, Rowan felt the valley changing him. Eldergate was no longer a place he visited. It was becoming a place that lived inside him. He walked through soft morning fog toward the far side of the village, where few ventured. Here, silence felt older, deeper, as if holding the breath of centuries. At a wooden bridge, he met a young woman humming softly to the water flowing beneath. She explained that humming near water had once been condemned, thought to draw mystical forces. Rowan stood beside her, feeling the melody merge with the water's rhythm. Crossing into a dense grove, Rowan encountered a man carving tiny symbols into leaves. He admitted medieval towns had punished his ancestors for strange leaf markings. Rowan watched as the delicate carvings fluttered gently to the ground. Near a small clearing, Rowan met a girl running her fingers across tree bark. She said touching trees too often meant your emotions were unstable. Rowan placed his palm against the bark, sensing the old strength beneath. On a grassy slope, Rowan found an elderly traveller staring peacefully into a field of tall grass. Watching movement for long moments was once considered a sign of drifting sanity. Rowan sat beside him, letting the slow sway become a lullaby. At the edge of the forest, Rowan met a man who collected fallen petals. People once called it pointless, a behaviour of the unstable. Rowan picked up a petal, letting its softness remind him of fleeting beauty. Further on, Rowan encountered a woman drawing circles in the soil with her fingertip. Repetitive drawing was once seen as an omen of imbalance. Rowan traced a circle beside hers, feeling grounded. By midday, Rowan reached an abandoned chapel overtaken by vines. Inside, a young boy lit candles and watched the flames flicker. He whispered that staring at flickering light once meant inviting dangerous dreams. Rowan sat with him, letting the candlelight glow warm his face. Outside the chapel, Rowan met a soft-spoken man sharpening stones simply for the sound. In medieval times, enjoying repetitive noises was suspicious. Rowan listened. The sound was strangely soothing. Deeper into the valley, Rowan found a woman releasing small wooden boats into a shallow stream. She explained that doing so without ritual purpose was once seen as unstable reverie. Rowan watched the tiny boats drift, carrying unspoken wishes downstream. A gentle elder invited Rowan to sit with her and braid grass into long strands. Braiding without intention was once a feared sign of compulsion. Rowan felt the grass between his fingers as she shared stories of her ancestors' quiet resilience. Near a rocky ridge, Rowan encountered a man stacking pebbles into spirals. Spiral making was once linked to troubled minds. Rowan added a pebble, admiring the shape forming. At twilight, Rowan met a woman who sat silently, listening to her heartbeat. She whispered that inner listening, paying attention to your own body, was once condemned. Rowan placed a hand over his chest, feeling the steady rhythm that carried him through every mile. As he moved toward the far edge of Eldergate, Rowan noticed lanterns being lit one by one across the valley. A villager explained that those who preferred dim light over bright daylight were once feared. Rowan felt comfort in the soft glow. Nearing nightfall, Rowan sat beside an old fountain, dipping his fingers into the cool water. Touching water repeatedly had once been considered a sign of emotional disturbance. Rowan felt only calm. Nearby, a young man wrote poetry on scraps of bark. Poetry without strict religious purpose was once discouraged. Rowan read the soft, simple words and felt their quiet truth resonate. At the base of a hill, Rowan found a woman lying in the grass with her eyes closed, listening to distant echoes. She said hearing faint sounds had once been feared as hallucination. Rowan lay beside her, listening too. As stars gathered above them like slow-moving fireflies, Rowan climbed the final ridge. Eldergate spread below him, glowing in candlelight, a valley of gentle souls misunderstood across time. He thought of every villager he'd met, every misunderstood behavior, every quiet habit mistaken as madness. And Rowan realized something profound. Fear had once shaped the world far more than truth. He understood then why Eldergate felt unlike any other place. It was a refuge for hearts the world once feared, a sanctuary for the quiet, the sensitive, the imaginative. And in their presence, Rowan found a healing he didn't know he needed. As a soft breeze brushed past him, Rowan closed his eyes. The valley hummed with the memories of centuries, not haunting, just softly alive. And Rowan knew he would carry this story with him forever, sharing it with anyone willing to listen. Far below, a child's laughter rose like a blessing. The night deepened, the stars leaned closer, and Eldergate held him gently, like a story asking to be told again. Subscribe to Sleepless Tales for more chilling stories, haunting mysteries, and endless nighttime adventures. Don't miss what comes next.